everyone. Madeline Dell here, and I have a fantastic author for you guys to listen to today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about them.
I'm Raven Oak. I'm a writer and artist in the Seattle area. I go by she, they, and besides being non-binary, I'm fairly geeky, so I'm into games and all kinds of fun stuff in addition to writing, and I'm happy to be here, so thank you for having me.
Anytime. So today we are talking about, and I'm hoping I say this right, a Maskin's Blood, right, in that series. Go ahead and tell our viewers a little bit about the characters and maybe a little bit about what's going on with that story.
So I like to introduce people to the series and to the books by telling them that the word Amaskin, it's like the word Alaskan, like you're from Alaska, just with an M. So if you're having trouble when you're looking at it and you're going, I don't know how to say that, it's Amaskin. So in this series, I really wanted to focus on the idea of an assassin group that they're kind of half monk, half assassin. And I tell people, if you've ever seen the TV show Leverage, either version of it, it's kind of my fantasy version of that, where, you know, kings in whatever setting that you have can buy their way out of a lot of interesting situations. And so I wanted a group that could be hired by anybody, even if you're totally broke, who would seek justice for you. So, you know, if somebody killed your sister, they would go find out what happened, investigate it, seek justice. If that meant killing the person who killed your sister, then so be it, even if they're a king. And that kind of started the idea. And the main character, well, one of them anyway, Adelaide, she's 19. She's one of the best Amaskans that's ever been trained because she grew up inside of the Order of Amaska rather than just training there as an adult. And so she's sent into the hands of her worst enemy, which happens to be her birth father.
Oh.
And she's sent there to protect her birth family from basically assassins that don't have morals. And while she's there trying to figure out what to do with this family she never asked for and try to save the world, she's also finding out truths about her growing up and her life and her adopted family that really shake the foundation of who she is. And so I like to tell people that, you know, yes, it's a coming of age story because, you know, that tends to be popular in fantasy, but it's more a story about sisters and what it means to be family and what chosen family versus your blood family can mean and which one she's going to choose.
I love that. That has already I'm definitely going to have to read this. I know I have a copy of it already. And that just makes me want to read it even more. First off, the focus on the sisters. Hello, that is right up my alley. I have a sister myself, and anything that talks about the relationship between sisters or siblings, that always gets me. I even I cried at the end of watching Frozen. Okay, so it's that intense, but I love that, and the fact that she has to choose between blood family and who she wants as family. That is a big thing. I feel in life in general that we have to do with. So, because we can't exactly choose who we're blood related to. And sometimes we're I don't want to be related to you. Please don't share a name with me. And others, you're why can't we just be sisters? And you basically, I claim them as family, even if they're not blood. I have several like that. And I love that that's one of the topics you're hitting on with this book, because that's a great topic. And then the whole assassins and it's Leverage. Holy crap, man. That is I can't wait to read it now, because that's just, yeah.
Well, the sisters have interesting arcs because, you know, her sister didn't really grow up with her, being that Adelaide was with the Order. And her sister is I intentionally made her this stereotypical spoiled princess that you want to hate.
Yes.
And she learns things from Adelaide about how to find her own agency, how to stand up for herself, how to not be a spoiled brat, how to rule. She learns all of these life lessons. But at the same time, Adelaide learns how to feel. She learns how to disconnect from the job enough to understand that family is not necessarily a liability.
Mhm.
And so they both kind of do this in their arcs as they learn from each other and their relationship changes. And that was something that I didn't originally set out to do, but it was one of those where the character hits you over the head and goes, "This is what we're going to do. Okay."
Yes.
And then that happened.
Gotta love when those characters hijack the story. Always makes
Yes.
it entertaining. So the world building for this, where did you get the inspiration for the world that they're living in?
Well, Boheme used to be a unified, I guess, country. It's large enough to be a continent, but it's not huge. It's certainly not United States level huge. But at one point there was a war and it split into what is now known as the Little Dozen Kingdoms. And I knew from the start that I wanted to do something like that. And so each kingdom, what I did, because I'm totally a linguistics geek, I decided each country in the background would have a culture that they were sort of loosely based off of. And
Yeah.
so, you know, Sadai, where the Order of Amaska is loosely based off of Hebrew culture. And so all of the words I went and looked up, let's say I want this character who's a bad person to have an evil name. So I tried to look up words that meant evil in Hebrew. And then I kind of shifted the letters a little to where that still looked like Hebrew, but was not Hebrew. And so I did that for all of the naming concepts for each of the Little Dozen Kingdoms. And as I was building that world, I did the same thing with architecture. And so it's like, all right, if this is a desert area, I'm going to go with a very Middle Eastern looking set of architecture with stone buildings and, things of that nature. So all of my world building kind of started with linguistics and then built outward based on those cultures and how much I wanted to pull from them and how much I wanted to insert as new stuff, since it's a fantasy and it's a fantasy world. And that's typically how I build my worlds. Is it all starts with language first. Every name has a meaning, and even if it's not clear to the reader in the book, it's something I know, so that it helps me develop those characters better.
That's fascinating. So did you have to do a lot of research then for this?
Oh, yeah.
Because it sounds like it. Yeah. That is so cool though that you started out there and it kind of like spiraled out and grew into the world that you've created. That is so cool.
Even talking to my cover artist, I was very clear to make sure that, okay, book one's cover, it starts in Sadai, so I want a very deserty background and I need the architecture to look like this. And I sent pictures of what that kind of style of architecture would look like. And then with book two's cover, which is in Alexander, which is more a France-based setting, I was like, all right, I need it to look like this and the architecture is going to look like this. And so everything gets detailed down to that level with me because world building is my thing.
I like it because there's a lot, you can play a lot with world building, especially when you want to put the time into it. And I feel like not everybody slows down enough to put time into world building. And I love it when I pick up a book and there is a creative world because there's a lot that goes into it.
One of the best compliments I got was when somebody said that they love my world building and I'm excellent at it without describing a table leg for 20 pages.
Oh gosh. Yes. That drives me
Some people,
bonkers.
they go overboard.
Yes.
And cough, George R.R. Martin. And, like, the table leg is not important to the plot. Why are you telling me what this looks like? Like, I don't need to know that.
Gosh, so yes.
It's not just about building the world and a lot of its background, but still, it's not just about that. It's about making sure that the stuff you include is necessary to push things forward.
Like, they don't need to know the color of every piece of like rock they pass. So yes, that is a good point. So I guess that is clear to say, like, world building is awesome unless you go overboard.
Yeah.
And this is the book one in your series. How many books do you plan to release in this series?
So book 3 comes out this summer. That'll be a Maskin's Honor. That'll finish the trilogy. And then in book 1, there's a character who kind of took over a little bit at places and became a fan favorite. Her name's Ida, and she's in her 50s, and she's this total badass who's still a warrior, but also still has her own agency and sex appeal. And to me, it was like, I think in my head, she's always been if Xena Warrior Princess had made it to her 50s. kind of
Sweet.
person. And so people have always loved that character. And so she's got her own story in that world coming out, hopefully later this year as well.
Nice. You're going to be busy, busy, busy writing everything.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. It's
Well,
always good to stay busy, though.
Her book's half written.
Yeah.
So, a lot of this is stuff that I've queued up.
Mhm.
Normally, I like to put out a couple releases a year, but right now it's mostly been short stories and anthologies just because COVID's been complicating everything. But
that's for sure. And now everything's trying to go back to normal, but it's like, no,
not yet.
So with writing and everything that's been going on, do you have a type of self-care that you practice, or maybe like a routine that you do to help keep your sanity going and your creativity flowing?
Well, for one, gaming is the love of mine. And so, it's something that I can go and play a game with my friends, online and relax. Or art is a big part of my life too. And so sometimes it's just, okay, I'm going to take my iPad and I'm just going to draw for a couple hours. And it's creative output, but it's a different kind of relaxation than writing. And so if I'm stressed about things, that's part of my self-care. I'm also in several writing groups, and we used to meet in person, but with COVID, it's been online. But even just meeting there and being like, all right, guys, can we take 15 minutes? I need a bitch session. I'm not in work mode yet.
Yes.
And being able to step back and just, vent with friends and be like, all right, this is a thing that's happening in my life helps.
That's good. And I love writing groups because I didn't really get into any until this last year, and I'm in several that are online writing groups, and those really help a lot. So like I didn't realize how much it would help me before, because I deal with a lot of anxiety and stuff on my end, and it's just like getting to work on stuff and then chat with them during like little sprints. It's nice. So
yeah.
But what is your writing routine like? Do you sit down at a specific time, or is it just kind of when the inspiration hits?
Well, I'm a full-time author, so for the most part, my Monday through Friday day job is writing. And so, I tend to get up in the morning, and because I do have autoimmune issues and such that I take medication for in the morning, I'm pretty groggy.
Yeah.
And I also have long COVID, which adds to the brain fog, unfortunately. So my writing schedule's kind of changed a bit.
Yeah.
But typically what I want to get back to, and what was normal for me beforehand, was, getting up and drinking my caffeine, getting ready for the day, checking some email, and then start writing. And I try to get in 1,000, 2,000 words in a day. I used to be able to do a lot more than that, but now that's a good number for me.
Yeah.
Get that done. I take my lunch break like I'm at the normal office. And then when I'm done with that, I can edit another project, work on a short story, work on some art. I tend to shift gears to something else creative for a little bit. And then that's my day. When it hits about 5:30, I'm done for the day. I tend to not be in writing groups that meet in the evenings because that's my family time. For me, it's stuff that meets during the day with other authors that are full time, and therefore, we can get the job done. That's
good. I like that, because it's good to have that family time. I try not to write or focus on anything during family time unless I absolutely have to. Because I know some of the people I interview, they work full time that are not authors. And that's like the only time that I try to do that on the weekends when everybody's home. So it's like I'm not just completely neglecting my child. My child's hanging out with dad. But I get that.
I used to do that when I was a teacher. I worked full time and then, wrote when I got home in the evenings and on the weekends. And that's when I got to do things. But, since having the opportunity to do this full time instead, that's been a lot better for me. And it was definitely easier to get published. Yeah. Having done that, because then I could focus on things. And, if I got something back from an editor that, was like, hey, I need these edits, it's something I could do quickly and not have to worry about, oh man, I'm grading essays for 300 students today. Oh, Oh, yeah,
man, gosh, teaching life. My mom's a teacher too. So she teaches, right now, special education. She's taught fourth grade, first grade, pre-K. classes did she teach in there? In second grade. So I'm just like, I don't know how she can handle it. Like,
yeah, I mad props to special ed teachers, especially elementary school.
mm-hmm.
That is not my bag. I taught high school classes to middle schoolers, and that was challenging enough. But the little ones, I'm like, nope, not my thing.
I would pull my hair out because I'm like, okay, my 4-year-old child, just one person drives me nutso bananas. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're home. Somebody else is home. Gosh, it's your turn to play with him. I need like 20 minutes of silence and peace, and I'm good.
Yeah.
So, gosh, which he's been sick most this week. I'm just like, today's my first day he's back at like school. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. Sorry, random tangent there.
Oh no, it's okay.
So with a series, you're releasing it this year, right?
Book 3, yeah.
Book 3, okay. When did you first realize you wanted to be an author?
I think this is something I've always wanted. If I go back into journals and things like that from when I was really little, it's always been a thing. But I tell people it's because I grew up as a professional liar, and I have way too much creativity in my brain. So if I were climbing a tree and I was 6 years old when this happened, and I fell out of the tree and ripped my shirt, and it was a brand new shirt, and we were really dirt poor. So like I knew I was going to be in serious trouble.
Yeah.
So when I got home, I climbed a tree and rescued a kitten. That's why I climbed the tree, because the kitten was going to die because there was this bad guy in the tree and he was trying to hurt the kitten. And so I rescued the kitten. And when I was climbing down, the kitten ripped my shirt. And I'm really sorry my shirt got ripped, but I rescued a kitten. Aren't I awesome? And that's what would happen.
Yeah.
To try to avoid getting in trouble. And because of that, people were like, oh, you're always so creative. You've got so many stories and you're such an elaborator. And it just kind of, I think that coupled with the fact that I wanted to write stories, it just became what it was. In 6th grade is when I really discovered, I would say, like hardcore fantasy and sci-fi. Before that in elementary school, you read things like A Wrinkle in Time and some of those kinds of books. But 6th grade is when I discovered Anne McCaffrey's Pern. And I was so obsessed with dragons that I spent that summer writing a 350-page novel that was basically Pern 2.0. And I didn't know what fan fiction was at the time, but I thought I was so badass for writing this book. And then I turned it into a trilogy. And then I got into high school and met professional authors through a teacher and learned that, oh, that's not really something I can publish or have published. And so I started attending writing conferences in high school and writing my own stuff, which was still really horrible, but that's kind of when the seriousness of it started.
That is really cool. So what do you define as success for yourself as an author?
Well, when I was in middle school, I had 2 goals. I wanted Michael Whalen, who did so many book covers, to do a book cover for me. He's retired, so that's never going to happen, probably. The other one was I wanted to publish enough works that I gained membership into SFWA, into the Science Fiction Writers of America, or what did they change it to? I don't remember now. But well, 3.5 years ago, I gained full membership into SFWA.
That is so cool.
They've changed their requirements now because indie publishing has changed the publishing landscape. But back then, you had to sell a certain amount of money worth of stories to traditional publishers to get in. It didn't count. And so I had to sell enough stuff to traditional publishers to get in. And the fact that I managed to do that was a big deal for me.
Yeah. Because it's hard to get in with a traditional publisher. It's super hard.
For me, that was like, I win. Even if I'm never anything more than, a known author in the Pacific Northwest, a Seattle Times bestseller author, that's good enough. Because I've got this membership and I've met that goal. I do keep, I have like a bingo chart
Yeah.
And it keeps expanding bigger and bigger and bigger. I think
That's
it's like
cool.
15 rows across now or something, or columns across and a bunch down. But I add things to it like, okay, I'd like to win a Hugo. That would be kind of cool, and things like that. So, and for those who don't know, Hugo is like the Oscars of writing for
That's
science fiction and fantasy. So, yeah, I tend to make more goals, but for me, I feel I've already met success.
That's awesome. And those are great goals. I like how you're like, I'm going to do this, and you're hitting those. Like that's great progress and great success. I absolutely love it. And that's super, congratulations on all of that, because that's amazing.
Thank you.
Super amazing. So with because you're indie too, right? Indie and traditional,
so I'm a hybrid.
So you're hybrid. What do you find is the biggest difference between those types of publishing?
Well, in terms of, I know a lot of people always have this question. So in terms of marketing, there's no difference. The amount of marketing you do as an indie published author is about the same as you would do for trad.
Okay.
So traditional publishers, because they know now that authors will do that much marketing, they pretty much, unless you're Stephen King or John Scalzi or somebody really huge, they don't do marketing. You do. So there's no difference there.
Yeah.
In terms of other differences, I like that sometimes traditional publishing will open doors for me that are otherwise closed to indie people, because some people still have negative viewpoints when it comes to the word indie. But I like with indie that I have control over, okay, I want this cover artist and I lost my arm. I want my cover to look like this. And, being in control of some of that is really awesome. There's Nnedi Okorafor, or Okafor. She had Binti come out, which won all kinds of awards, but the first cover of it featured a white character on the cover. It's a book set in Africa about people of color. There's no white people in that book. And the publisher did that because they're like, well, white people on covers sell better. Once she became famous because her book won so many awards and sold so well, she was able to then renegotiate, and they redid the cover and made it correct. But newer authors, lesser known authors, when you go trad, you don't have those options. They will do whatever they want. And usually the cover artist reads a summary of your book, like a 1-page brief. They don't read your book. They don't have time. So getting a cover that actually works is tricky.
Yeah.
Indie, you get that control.
Yeah.
And so I would say that that's some of the big differences, is that negotiating power. Now, if you're traditionally published and you have an agent, you have all kinds of negotiating power because your agent is there to negotiate.
Yeah.
And if you've got an agent, that means you're known enough that you've got some power.
Yeah.
Some leverage. But, otherwise, not so much.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's crazy. That would drive me nuts. So I like being able to control like my covers. So
yeah.
If you had a piece of advice or suggestion for an aspiring writer wanting to become an author or a brand new author, what would it be?
I think you should ignore and embrace at the same time the idea of writing daily. And I say it that way because I used to be one of those that, like Neil Gaiman said, you have to write daily. You really need to, because if you're not, then you're not going to keep that habit up. It's too easy to stop. However, that's a very ableist attitude, because as someone who recently did become disabled, you don't always have that luxury. There are some days where pain or symptoms of whatever your disability is, your kid is in the ER all day, something is there that makes that not possible. And you have to give yourself enough permission and grace to be able to say, today didn't happen. Maybe while I was sitting in the ER, I thought about my story. Maybe I jotted down a sentence, something to make me think, oh, tomorrow I can do this. or maybe I thought about character names, or maybe I didn't at all. And that's still okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, don't use that as a crutch.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, both ignore and embrace. Because on some level, if you're not writing regularly, you're not writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of finding that balance. It's tricky, but you need to find it. And then once you accept that as your balance, I'm only going to do 100 words a day, or I'm only going to do, this many words a day, or write for 30 minutes, or I'm going to stare at the screen for 30 minutes, but I thought about writing something.
Yeah.
If you're doing that regularly, you'll get there.
That's good. And as a parent, did you have a harder time figuring out that balance between everything for a while? Like, what was your biggest struggle finding a balance between family and writing?
Well, I have furry children.
Ooh.
And so, I think for me, the struggle was acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I know that when, I got diagnosed with Sjogren's, which is basically the twin sister of lupus.
Oh, man.
And then I got long COVID, which just compounds all of that. I found that there were days where 100 words was all I could do. And this is, coming from somebody who used to be able to do a 10,000 word day if I was on a good scene.
Yeah.
So I kind of step back from that and look at that and go, that feels like failure.
Mm-hmm.
Finding the ability to forgive myself and then say, wait, I don't need to forgive myself. This is still okay. This is still writing. I think that was the hardest part for me, because if I wasn't okay with that, then I was spending my family time stressing about what I wasn't doing.
Yeah.
Rather than spending it with my family. Mm-hmm. And, accepting that, okay, taking your cat to the ER is still an acceptable loss of time.
Mm-hmm.
That happens.
It's a very important thing.
And it's a very important thing. And, we had to reschedule this because, cat ended up in the ER, and then 2 of them actually. And it was just, things like that happen. Life happens while you're working. Yes. And while I love what I do, and I don't see myself being able to do anything else at this point, nothing about my career is worth losing time with my family. It just isn't.
Yeah.
And, so you have to kind of come to a decision on that of what your priorities are and where things rank. And if you're somebody who says my evenings are for family, stick to it.
Yes. You got to keep those boundaries. Mm-hmm. Boundaries. I've had to learn that the hard way. So, and it's, yeah. Awesome. Well, go ahead and tell our viewers where they can find your work.
Well, I'm at www.ravenoak.net. I do not own .com. It's owned by somebody in China who wants me to buy it for $5 million. Yeah, not happening. And if you go there and you scroll to the bottom, I have links to all of my social media. I have a Facebook reader group. I have a mailing list. I have Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it. I'm probably on it. I think the only thing I'm not on yet is TikTok. So yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me. And my books are on Amazon, of course, but they're also at bookstores worldwide. You can find me in England and Australia, and you can also find me at Barnes and Nobles and Powell's and indie bookstores everywhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.